Win, the main character, is being interrogated by the police, who accuse him of exploiting religion for profit. He insists they have no evidence and demands a lawyer. The story flashes back 6 months earlier. Win and his team, Deer in Game, have created a successful NFT game, Pirates Hell, and are excited about their growing wealth. However, their success crumbles overnight when hackers crash the game's token value. They soon discover that their programmer, Golf, was behind the attack, likely working with their creditors, who now demand repayment with heavy interest. Win is attacked by the creditors' men but refuses to involve the police. Meanwhile, his team scrambles to clean up their mess. As Win seeks solace at his family home, he becomes intrigued by the massive donations temples receive. This inspires a bold idea: instead of rebuilding their game, they should partner with a struggling temple, modernize its marketing, and profit from the donations while keeping things legal. Despite initial skepticism, Deer in Game agree to the plan, hoping it will be their way out of financial ruin. 2 years ago, Win, Deer, and Game started their game company. Game brought Win into the team, despite Win being a top student who quit school to take a risk with them. They made a blood pact using ketchup, promising to stick together. In the present, they search for the perfect temple to partner with. It needs to be small, not too remote, and have little competition. They accidentally find the ideal place when Deer stops for a bathroom break. There, they meet Tang, the temple's lay leader, who controls the finances since the abbot is old and sick. They offer Tang 40,000 baht a month, plus bonuses, if he lets them run the temple's marketing and finances. Tempted by the money, he agrees. The next day, he introduces them to the abbot as young people looking to improve the temple. They donate supplies to gain trust, and the abbot allows them to proceed. To fund the project, Deer sells her shop, Win sells his shares, and Game pawns valuables. They renovate the temple, set up digital wallets for donations, and add cashless payment options. They also introduce new ways to make money, like selling candles, incense, and Buddha boxes. They settle into the temple and prepare for the big opening day, but no one shows up. Tang explains that if a temple looks fully complete, people feel less need to donate. Game suggests creating a ghost legend to attract people, but Deer disagrees. Instead, she comes up with a better idea, using a famous presenter or monk as a temple ambassador to draw in believers. The team agrees and begins searching for the perfect monk. After reviewing many options, they choose a Thai Korean monk, Dongwon. Win and Game travel to meet him, but he's fully booked for months. While waiting, they hear another monk, Monk Dole, whose powerful preaching deeply moves them. They decide he is a better choice. Win learns that Monk Dole wants to build a Dharma pavilion but lacks funds. They use this to convince him to join their temple, saying he can spread his teachings to more people in the city. He agrees, and the abbot allows him to stay for 3 months. Meanwhile, Deer organizes a flea market event and introduces a singing contest to attract visitors. The team promotes Monk Dole online, and his practical teachings quickly make him popular. Donations increase, and the temple earns over 70,000 baht daily. They plan to boost profits further to meet their debt payment. Tang, seeing the money flowing in, demands a cut by raising parking fees. Win allows it but warns him to be careful. Later, Tang brags at a karaoke bar and hints at a new way for his friends to make money. One night, Win sees a mysterious monk arrive at the temple. He follows him and finds out the abbot has introduced him as Monk Ekachai, who will assist with temple matters. Tang tells Win and Game that a politician is sponsoring the ordination of 16 monks, including Tang's friends. Meanwhile, the abbot's health worsens, and Monk Ekachai takes over temple duties. Game makes the first loan payment but is reminded they still owe 45 million baht. At the temple, Monk Dole teaches students, and a young boy asks about his thoughts on Deer, which annoys him. Tensions rise when Tang's friends, accused of being fake monks, start a fight. Ekachai steps in, sets strict rules, and takes control of temple finances. Tang's friends complain, but he tells them to stay quiet. During a funeral, bikers storm the temple, vandalizing and looting. Ekachai suspects rivalry from another temple, as their temple recently took over a politician's sponsorship. Game retaliates by spreading negative posts about the rival temple's abbot. As the Buddhist Lent begins, their temple gains more believers due to the scandal. Meanwhile, Deer asks Monk Dole about love and suffering, and he tells her that love is temporary and should not cause suffering when it ends. Later, the rival temple's abbot arrives, demanding they stop events and focus only on religious merits. The temple abbot orders them to comply, leaving Win. Game, and Deer worried about their debt. Game admits he started the scandal, and tensions rise. That night, Ekachai hears a noise and finds Win standing over the motionless Abbott on the floor. They bring Abbott Vera in the hospital. Ekachai thanks Win for finding him in time, but Deer and Game wonder why Win was there so late. The Abbot returns to the temple to recover, while Monk Dole leaves for the forest temple. Deer gives him the Dharma Pavilion drawings, saying everyone wants him to stay. Meanwhile, Win disappears. Game makes the loan payment, and the lawyer grows curious about their business. Later, Game visits his family, but they continue to ignore him, favoring his cousin Oat, a Harvard graduate, as the heir to the family business. At the forest temple, Monk Dole struggles to focus, distracted by thoughts of Deer. Back at the city temple, things fall apart when police raid the grounds after discovering Tang and his fake monk friends were smuggling drugs. Tang escapes, but his friends are arrested. The scandal causes believers to abandon the temple, and a detective starts investigating Win, Game, and Deer's financial contributions. Monk Dole narrowly avoids being linked to the scandal, as he had already left the temple. His abbot praises his podcast work. Meanwhile, the temple's reputation worsens online with viral clips of elderly women fighting over the scandal and footage of Tang fleeing from police. Ekachai reassures them that the temple has been cleared, but faith is personal, and people may not return. Meanwhile, Monk Dole reflects on the city and Deer, reminded of her when he sees a firefly. Vendors at the flea market demand rent refunds due to the temple's bad image, while on a call with Deer, Win accidentally knocks over a ball, which hits his cat. Seeing the cat's amulet sparks an idea: selling amulets. Game doubts the idea, saying only historical amulets sell. However, Deer suggests creating stories for them. And Win believes they can use their viral fame to their advantage. Win, Game, and Deer brainstorm how to sell amulets and realize they need a famous monk's blessing. Their prayers are answered when Monk Dole returns to the temple to change sections. Deer suggests using his social media fame to boost sales, and Win asks her to talk to him. Win and Game pitch the idea to Ekachai, who supports it and helps with research. Game also asks Win about the abbot's collapse, and Win reveals he was there to negotiate when he found him unconscious. Deer convinces Monk Dole to join their search for sacred objects, even though he doubts their significance. She argues that some people rely on them for faith. Monk Dole agrees to help and stay at the temple until his merit-making is complete. Deer and Win travel across Thailand with Monk Dole to collect sacred items, while Game stays behind to manage temple affairs. Ekachai decides to use the amulet sales to fund scholarships and job programs instead of building the pavilion. During their journey, Win and Deer argue about whether they're exploiting Monk Dole and if they should build the pavilion for him. Their conversation is cut short when Dole approaches, at a hotel by the ocean. Dole and Deer have a deep conversation about loneliness and regret. Dole shares that he was sent to the temple as a child after his parents' deaths. Deer relates to him, recalling her mother's passing and her struggles with feeling alone. Dole advises her to learn to love herself. Win interrupts and invites Deer to eat with him. Meanwhile, a detective investigates the temple sponsors and has photos of Win, Game, and Deer. He discusses corruption among his superiors before heading out. Deer again pushes for building the pavilion, but Win tells her to wait until they solve their current problems. This reminds Deer of her mother's death, revealing that Win was her childhood neighbor. He comforted her when her mother died of lymphoma, and she struggled with funeral rites due to her mixed religious upbringing. The scene shifts to when the detective confronts Game at the temple, addressing him by his family name and questioning why someone from a wealthy background is counting money in a temple. Game, initially startled but then regains his composure. The detective suspects that Game, Win, and Deer might be using the temple for illegal activities like drug dealing or money laundering. The police chief allows him to investigate as long as it doesn't turn out like a past case. Meanwhile, Monk Dole starts having strange dreams about Deer. Game makes a loan payment, but he's short on the amount. The lawyer's assistant threatens him with a water gun, warning him that next time it won't be a joke. Outside, Game runs into the detective and figures out he's a cop. He fakes a car accident to confirm it, then texts Win and Deer to warn them they're in trouble. Game gets a call that his grandfather is sick and rushes home. He's upset that his sister, who already has a baby, is taking care of their grandfather too. He asks his dad for money, but his dad refuses, making him angry and jealous of their wealthier relatives. Back at the temple, Win, Deer, and Monk Dole collect the last sacred object for their amulets. But the abbot refuses to give it to them because he doesn't trust them. Dole tries to talk to him but gets beaten up by temple boys. Deer treats his wounds, and Dole starts feeling close to her. When Game returns to the temple, he warns Win and Deer about the police and creditors, but they don't seem to care. The amulet sales are worse than expected, and the creditors start threatening Game's family. Game loses trust in Win, and they argue, blaming each other for their problems. They both make separate plans. Win orders more amulets, while Game looks for an expert to help sell them. They stop talking to each other. Deer meets with a friend who's working on her wedding hall's interior design and gets introduced to a potential client. Win secretly follows a rescue team, filming them to use for amulet promotion, but doesn't tell Deer. He calls her to meet him, not explaining what he's really doing. A serious bus and truck accident happens during a storm. Deer drives them to the scene first, and they see the terrible crash. Win picks an injured truck driver to be the miracle survivor for their amulet story. They help get him to the hospital, planning to pay him 200,000 baht in exchange for saying the amulet saved him. However, the driver, who can't move his legs, is upset and kicks them out. Later, a nurse finds the amulet and places it by the driver's bed. At the end, Game is at home caring for his grandfather, watching the news about the accident. Deer looks lost in thought, and Win stares at his trading screen, hoping for a miracle. In a surprising twist, the truck driver suddenly moves his toes, shocking doctors. He credits the amulet for his miracle, and soon the temple gains attention. People flood the temple to buy amulets, and other temples place large orders. Win uses fake advertising to boost sales and quickly sells out of amulets. Game is still not back at work, and with the next payment approaching, Deer urges Win to contact a trader for coins and dollars. Win mentions he has another plan, but Deer is suspicious as Game argues with his father about the amulet and later gives 500,000 baht to Tang, who is on the run from someone after him. Game tells Tang not to come back to his house. Monk Dole, struggling with his faith, looks for Deer when she doesn't show up for a podcast. He offers to help her with work, but she refuses. She hints at leaving after their business is done, which disappoints him. The police continue investigating the temple and the amulets, focusing on the factory and the truck driver who claims the amulet saved him. They threaten the driver with a drug charge to get more information. Tang approaches Game again, threatening him with a gun and demanding 3 million baht. Game tells him they don't have it, but they've converted the money to crypto. Game hides Tang at an old factory while trying to figure out how to get the money. Game also investigates Tang's mysterious boss. At the temple, Abbott points to a picture when Game asks about the person Tang was working for. Ekachai enters, and Game tells him about Tang's blackmail. Win's mother drives to the temple, and Win admits to scamming people with fake stories about the amulet. His mother gets upset, saying he shouldn't mock beliefs. They argue, and she slaps him when he says the amulet won't bring back his missing father. Monk Dole confesses his love for Deer and says he's thinking of quitting monkhood. Deer runs away, only to encounter the police, who have an arrest warrant for her and Win. At the factory, Game gives Tang 1 million baht, but when he returns later, Tang is dead. Game takes the money and runs out of the factory. The police raid the temple and arrest Deer, Win, and Monk Dole. They search the temple and Win's house. Monk Ekachai cooperates with the police, providing access to the temple's records. Win stays calm during interrogation, and with no evidence against him, the police are forced to release him and Deer. Meanwhile, Game meets Ekachai, who hints at involvement in Tang's death and pushes him to expand the temple's business for profit. After their release, Deer and Win are taken to a hotel, where they find Game and a politician. The politician pressures them to continue running temple operations on a larger scale, revealing Tang's severed hand as a threat. It turns out the arrests were orchestrated to blackmail them into compliance. Monk Dole, realizing he was being used, leaves the temple and writes a farewell letter to Deer. Ekachai admits he caused the abbot's health decline, leading to his death. Win confronts the detective, who hints at knowing what happened to Win's missing father and offers more information if Win cooperates. The episode ends with Deer preparing to leave for the US, Game facing his disappointed family, and Win discovering a hidden message from his father in a childhood paper toy.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe and like for more videos like this.